Sherilyn Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 228 of the Brilliant Balance podcast, and today we're talking about the paradox of choice. So this episode starts with a scene that might be very familiar to you. Maybe you've had this experience. This weekend, I was trying to find something to watch on Netflix. Right? I bet you're already like rolling your eyes because I sat down finally, right? Okay, I'm going to find something that's for me. And I have the remote control in one hand. Actually, if I'm being honest, I had 3 remote controls because I never know which one is going to turn anything on or fix the volume or whatever. 3 remote controls, something lovely to drink. I've got my jammies on. I'm so excited to settle in and find something that is for me. And after scrolling around and poking around and searching on Netflix, I did what you probably do, and I switched to HBO Max. And then I scrolled around and poked around and looked at everything that was on HBO Max, and you know where this is going. Then I went to Disney Plus, and then Apple TV, and then back to Netflix. And honestly, after too much time of watching trailers and short snippets and reading descriptions and checking reviews of different things online on my phone, which was also in my hand, I gave up and I watched nothing at all. So this was such a great illustration to me of some dynamic that clearly was at play. And I feel like I had been seeing this show up in a variety of places in my life. And it's something that I think of as the paradox of choice. And it turns out that I was behaving, with my Netflix example, in exactly the same way as shoppers in a classic study. It was done in 2000, which sounds like a really long time ago until I remember it was the year I got married. So it was done in 2000 by 2 psychologists, Sheena Iyengar, who I hope I'm saying her name correctly, and Mark Lepper. And what they did is they put 24 jars of jam into an upscale grocery store on a display. Okay, and on one day, shoppers come into this food market and they see a display table with these 24 varieties of gourmet jam. And if they sampled them, they got a coupon for $1 off any jam. Okay, and then they measured who bought what. And then on another day for this research, shoppers came in, same store, same table, except instead of 24 varieties of jam, there were 6 on display. Now, it turns out a couple of interesting things happened. That larger display, the one with 24 varieties of jam, attracted more interest. More people stopped by, more people kind of took a look at what was going on there. But when the time came to buy something, the people who saw the bigger display with 24 were 10%, 1/10, as likely to buy as people who had seen the smaller display. It doesn't add up, right? You're like, why would they be less likely to buy something? I mean, isn't more choice a good thing? Well, it turns out maybe and maybe not. And I think this maybe has an echo of what I was dealing with trying to find a movie to watch. And maybe it's an echo of some things that we are dealing with in our own lives on a bigger scale or our children's lives, on a scale for them. Too many choices can be more trouble than they're worth. So I did some digging into this because whenever I have a hunch, I usually want to go validate my hunch. Like, is there something that's been done to back this up? And that study was the first thing that I found, which ironically was called the paradox of choice, which is the same phrase that had been running through my head. So there's a few things that I learned here that I want to share with you in today's episode. The first one is that objectively, having more options does something really good for us. And what is that? Well, it increases the odds that we will get a better outcome, right? If we have more choices, then our odds of getting a better outcome go up objectively. Having those options lets us having 50 styles of jeans instead of 2 styles of jeans increases the likelihood that we are going to be able to find a pair that fits. Now, I might need 500 styles of jeans before I can do that, but 50 styles of jeans instead of 2, you're going to have better odds of finding a pair that fits objectively, right? Quantitatively, measurably. But, and here's where it gets interesting, the subjective outcome of that, right? The way it feels may be that we end up overwhelmed and dissatisfied, right? That can be the subjective outcome of having so many options in front of us, okay? So our feelings about it might not line up with objectively the fact that we have better odds of getting a better outcome. Because subjectively, one of 2 things can happen. First, the first thing that can happen is we can get paralyzed. When we have too many choices, we can end up not choosing at all. This is exactly what happened to me with picking a movie. I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to read my book on my Kindle like I do every other night. Or what could happen with the jam when they had more choices, they ended up not choosing at all. They just walked away without buying, okay? The psychological term for this is choice overload, or even more simply, overchoice. Sometimes it's called overchoice. And that is really what drives us to that being paralyzed in a moment of indecision. That concept, I think, was first introduced, as far as I can tell, by Alvin Toffler, and he had a book called Future Shock, and he talked about this concept of choice overload or overchoice. And this used to happen to me all the time. I mean, I used to play, my best friend used to call it playing Paralyzed and Indecision like it was a game, because I would get to some place like choosing what to eat off of a restaurant menu, or choosing something to buy, picking a birthday card for someone, or trying to figure out what I was going to wear that day. And I would just get overwhelmed because I was trying to optimize for the perfect choice. So that term was coined. I was in a honey baked ham store in Atlanta with this friend, and we were trying to pick a ham to have for Easter dinner. I mean, how ridiculous is this? And they're basically all the same, but there were so many of them, and they kept bringing out more wrapped up in the foil and showing me what they looked like. And I could not choose which one I wanted. So we always laugh when we remember the origin story behind being paralyzed in indecision. But that was this example of overchoice, right? If I would have walked in, and there were a couple of hams, and I'm going to grab one, fine. But when there were hundreds and they kept bringing out ham after ham, I mean, it's absurd, but it really got to a place where it was so hard to make a decision. So that's the example that objectively having more choices makes it more likely that we can get a good outcome, but sometimes we get so overwhelmed that we end up not choosing at all, okay? Do you ever find yourself saying, I just need a minute to breathe? While the whole idea of meditation can sound totally intimidating, I've found that stepping away from the chaos of life, even just for a few minutes, is incredibly restorative. So if you're short on time, but could use a few moments of peace right about now, listen to my 5-minute meditation for working moms. It'll help you clear your head and come back to your day feeling centered and refreshed. Head over to brilliant-balance.com/breathe. Press play and settle in for a few mini moments of peace right now. The second thing that can happen subjectively, and I bet you can relate to this, is that we make a choice from this nearly infinite array of options, but we immediately start to second guess it. And because we second guess it, we ultimately feel less satisfied, right? That we make a choice, we start thinking, oh, what if there was a better option out there? We start thinking about those other options, and that diminishes our satisfaction. And if you're struggling to come up with an example of where this might show up for you, let me give you a few places where you might have experienced this. Online shopping, right? Online shopping where you are trying to buy something that's not like, it's not an obvious choice. For example, if I want this particular shampoo or dry shampoo or lip balm or something, and I know I'm getting this exact one, I'm not really out there trying to compare options, that's easy. But online shopping where you're like, maybe I'll see if I can find a new pair of running shoes. And instead of going to stores, I'm going to go online. Well, quickly, you can start having a pretty complicated comparison game going on because there's so many options, right? That could work. Trying to find something like bedding online or a new office chair online. I mean, there's just hundreds, if not thousands of options, and it can really start to make you feel like you're never going to find the very best one. Another example would be job posting sites. Back in the day when we were waiting for a recruiter or we had to go to a company and find out if they were hiring, right? In the olden days, this was a very different dynamic. Today, the fact that we can just go online and look at thousands and thousands of listings for open positions, it can feel like we are never going to make the best possible choice. Dating apps, right? This is not a world I'm in these days, and I'm grateful for it because it sounds like hard to navigate so many choices, just infinite choices that could be out there to sift and sort through. Not just here's the people I've met through my social circle or where I go to school or where I work, but kind of this exponential growth of available options. We already talked about Netflix and all of the streaming services, choosing which content we will consume, including things like podcasts. We're just entering an era in which the choices are nearly infinite. I have a daughter who's a junior in high school. When you think about college choices, they are so overwhelmed by the nearly endless choices and possibilities for colleges, and then nested within that, majors, right? And then classes to choose. It's a massive array of choice. So it turns out that the satisfaction that we feel with choices follows, I'm going to sound like a total nerd here. It follows an inverted U-shaped curve. So picture an upside down U, okay? And if it goes out from left to right, I want you to picture this U. Having no choices results in very low satisfaction, okay? So you kind of get something down in the lower left corner. And initially, having more choices increases your satisfaction. So as you go out to the right, you're going up the U. But as the number of choices kind of increases, eventually it peaks and you start to feel pressure and confusion and overwhelm about the choices. And so your level of satisfaction as the number of choices gets too high starts to come back down the other side of that U. So it makes like a big mountain, right? Low satisfaction if you don't have enough options, low satisfaction if you have too many options. So people seem to think that they like more choices, but actually as you get into it, there's so much stress associated with making the decision that it diminishes our satisfaction, okay? If you only had to go to the store and choose between 2% milk and whole milk, you can make that choice. But if you have how many milks are in the display case these days, how many varieties of lactose-free and organic and non-organic and 0, 1, 2, 3% and et cetera, right? Just a proliferation of choice to try to find the best option. Too many choices actually starts to limit our freedom. So it turns out that making a decision becomes overwhelming, starts to have negative emotions like stress associated with it because there are so many potential outcomes and every one of them feels like it carries a risk of making the wrong choice, okay? Especially if those options are like approximately equally good. There's not huge variation among the options. And I'll give you another, think about the grocery store, the yogurt aisle. Have you tried to buy yogurt and really thought about from all the choices which one you want to make? I mean, you will walk out of that aisle with no yogurt every time, right? So the good news is there is a sweet spot. There is a sweet spot, again, on that inverted U curve. And the sweet spot is probably between 8 and 15 options. 8 and 15, that's what the data says. If we have too few choices, we can feel a little cheated or trapped, right? Like, well, my right option isn't here. But if we have too many, we get really overwhelmed, okay? So I want to go back to the yogurt aisle for a second. What you probably do instinctively is you start to create your own limited set, and choose within that, which helps make the whole process more enjoyable. For example, you might say, I know I'm going to buy Greek yogurt, so all of these non-Greek yogurt options are off the table. Or I know I like this brand of yogurt, so anything that's not this brand is off the table. Or I'm going to buy what's on sale. Anything not on sale is off the table, right? Or I'm going to buy ones that have fewer than 80 calories per container. Anything more than that's off the table. So if you think about how you're in practice making decisions, you're applying some sort of rule to limit the set so that it becomes manageable. Otherwise, just again, stay in the grocery store with me. Cereal aisle, laundry detergent aisle, hand soap aisle, places where there's just we are using some criteria to limit our options, or we would never get out of the store, right? Now, that's all well and good in the grocery store, but we are making choices every day in our lives. And I fundamentally believe that the amount of time and energy that we're spending making those choices could be better optimized. And we could stay out of the trap of, I'm so paralyzed by this, I'm not going to make a decision at all, like my Netflix example. Or I'm so overwhelmed by the number of choices that I'm constantly second guessing myself. And that is causing a lot of kind of buyer's remorse, right? Decider's remorse, where I'm just not sure I made the right decision. So what do we do, right? I want you to think about choices, your own choices, the ones people around you are making, like your family members or your colleagues. And I want you to think about, is the factor of too many choices diminishing our satisfaction or the quality of our outcome here? And if it is, I want you to think about, is there a way to shift the frame so that there really is an optimal number of options to choose among? In other words, can you narrow it down a bit using some type of criteria so you can spend less time making a decision and more time living it out, right? More time applying that decision and getting the benefits of it, whether they're intrinsic rewards for you or rewards for your business. Can you do less comparing and searching and researching and shopping and get comfortable with having a more limited set of options up front, because it may ultimately increase your satisfaction? I think you'll be really pleasantly surprised when you start doing this. And it's as simple as taking the same rough methodology that I was describing for the yogurt and applying it to other areas of your life. So whether you're looking for a new job, whether you are looking for someone to date, whether you are looking for a movie to watch on Netflix, whether you're doing online shopping, can you apply some set of criteria that helps you limit your options and then quickly decide and get on with it so that you can get busy reaping the rewards? That's what I have for you today, my friends, on the paradox of choice. I would love to hear your thoughts on this concept. I'd love to hear how choices are affecting you in your life. And the best place to do that is to come over to the Facebook group called Brilliant Balance. Just search groups for Brilliant Balance and we will welcome you in. And you can also get into the conversation on Instagram. We post at brilliant_balance as well as at C-School-Nikki, 2 places that you can find content from me and from the company online. And we would love to talk about this with you. So those are 2 great places to do it. That's all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.